Hey, good morning, everyone. How's everybody this morning?
Morning.
It's a wonderful fall day outside. I do not plan to have you in here all day, just up until 12 noon. We'll be good to go. So this morning, what we have is we're going to have the teacher's evaluation report for committee. Is there any public comment? If there is none, we'll move right into that. All right, no public comment. We'll move right into the reports to the committee, starting with the teacher's evaluation. Yes. Yep.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about our teacher evaluation tool, the Danielson evaluation tool. And I think all of you got a copy of it, hopefully. Had a chance to look it over. And I'll get right into it. I'm Eric Harmson, in case you don't know. I'm the Director of HR Strategy and Talent Performance. And I've been in the district for 6 years, and I'm an Otto Hills graduate, and it's fantastic to be in the district and
All right.
working back. I love going to Mulek Park. It's a lot smaller than I remember it. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the Danielson evaluation tool. The Danielson framework for teaching is the long name for it. It was developed in 1996 by Charlotte Danielson, definition of good teaching. It's been revised 3 times in 07, 11, and 2013. There's organized into 4 domains, 22 components, and 76 elements. It's a valid and research-based measure of teacher practice. 1 out of 4 teacher evaluation tools approved by the Michigan Council of Educator Effectiveness. So that came out of the work through the governor's office and through that committee that worked 2 or 3 years to research what are the best rubrics and frameworks to use to evaluate teachers. Each component of the framework for teaching has been validated by the measures of effective teacher study. The framework for teaching has been found to have predictive, I'll tell the truth. It's been predictive validity. So that's one of the things you look at with a model that's measuring performance is it valid, is it predictive? So the bottom line is it going to help improve student outcomes? Is it going to help improve student achievement? And through the study, it has been proven to predict student achievement. So if a teacher is performing highly through the framework, then it's more than likely that student growth will reflect that. So this is right off the MD website, Michigan Educator Evaluation Postings and Assurances, about the validity of the tool. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. So there's 4 domains: planning and preparation, classroom environment, instruction, and professional responsibilities. And they're broken down to components. So planning and preparation is knowledge of content. Does the lesson and the lesson plan show knowledge of the content, knowledge of the students, setting instructional goals, demonstrating knowledge of resources, designing coherent instruction, and designing student assessments. So really, what is best practice? If you talk to pretty much any expert in teaching and learning, they'll say those are obviously areas of effective instruction.
I have a question.
Sure.
Could you give me a little bit more explanation on demonstrating knowledge of students? What does that mean?
So do you know where they are with their learning level? Do you know any special needs for any students? Do you not only do you know your students, but do your lesson plans and your instruction reflect that knowledge? So you can know it, but do you use that to plan the most effective lesson so each and every student can learn? So do you know their learning needs? Do you know their social and emotional needs? Are you able to plan instruction around that? So classroom environment, creating an environment of respect and rapport. establishing a culture of learning, managing classroom procedures, managing student behavior, and organizing physical space. So is a teacher able to establish a culture of learning? Is there rigorous standards? Are there expectations for all students to learn? Creating an environment of respect and rapport. So do students respect each other? Do they respect the teacher? Managing student behavior. Are students on task? If students are not doing what they need to do, does the teacher address it in an effective and respectful way? Do students take ownership in the classroom, into their own behaviors and each other's behaviors? Are there classroom procedures? And then organizing physical space. So is the classroom set up in a way that all students have equal access to the learning? The main three is instruction, communicating with students, using question and discussion techniques, engaging students in learning using assessment and instruction, demonstrating flexibility and responsiveness. So those are all areas that, again, have been researched as what are most effective teaching practice in improving student outcomes. All of those are areas. Then professional responsibilities. So those are everything that are outside of the classroom, reflecting on teaching, maintaining accurate records, communicating with families, participating in professional learning community, growing, developing professionally, and showing professionalism. So those are all the other things that teachers do that impact students. So this one, the fourth domain is not, yes.
I'm just curious, the reflecting on teaching, I understand what it means, but I'm curious on how we gauge it.
So throughout the year, is there areas that the teacher has looked at and say, okay, I need to improve this? Are they taking ownership of their teaching? Are they taking ownership of the students' learning? Are they looking and changing their instruction to improve student outcomes? Are they fulfilling the responsibilities of the post-observation conferences and reflecting on that? So it's are they learners? Are they looking at what they're doing, looking at their students and improving?
Yeah, I understand what it means, but I'm wondering how we gauge it.
So at the end of the year, there's a rubric for this. So there's components under that. So the evaluator will look at the components. There's elements. So there's elements under that reflecting on teaching, and the teacher brings in evidence. This is what I've done to reflect on my teaching throughout the year. I've looked at my data.
So this probably happens, I guess, you did say during a post-observation discussion then.
So during a post-observation conference, part of that is the teacher may come up with this is the next steps I'm going to do based on feedback, or the evaluator may say, okay, these are the next steps I'd like to see, so have they implemented those? Are they looking at their data? And at the end of the year, the evaluator and the teacher have a discussion to go over that. Again, the teacher brings in evidence. The evaluator will say, this is what I saw, what did you see, and they have discussion around it.
Thank you.
Do they meet, so for example, do they meet as teams throughout the year and are able to reflect on what they're doing as a team, whether it's math or English or?
So they
that what
meet
you-
in PLCs throughout the year and reflect on their teacher, talk about their teaching. One of the things that some of the principals that I think is effective practice have worked on is having similar goals. So if I have a group of math teachers, we're going to be working on some of the same instructional practices, and we're going to write our own individual goals around that. It's also a part of the school improvement plan, and they can share data at the professional learning communities and reflect on what's working or not working. It's one of really the powers of a professional learning community, is that teachers can share their data, share what strategies that worked or didn't work. And I think that's a strength of the Grand Rapids evaluation model, is that things are connected. That's one of the main goals when we implemented and designed evaluation system is that things were connected. The school improvement plan is connected to the district school academic plan. My individual goal as a teacher is connected to the school improvement goal. What other teachers are working on in my school, that's connected. What professional development that the district and the principals are providing is also connected.
This is just a larger question I was going to maybe wait for, but this seems like a good time to insert it. Teacher quality has just been a very appropriate focus over the last, 15 years and how to zero in on it. But I've always thought one of the significant questions that was missing early on in the conversation around teacher quality was, you have some superstar teachers that under extraordinary circumstances can really deliver on a lot of these levels. And you have some teachers that should not be in the profession. They chose the wrong profession, not a match for whatever reason. But the vast majority of teachers are in the middle, and the extent to which they're going to become a great teacher or a poor teacher is the context under which they teach. So with these domains, especially domain 2 and 4, there's the level at which they're going to perform on some of these elements is going to be related to the context in which they're teaching. So the building leadership may be first step, and then the district as a whole. So one of my questions is, in these two domains, do you look at overall patterns with some teachers in a way of assessing building leadership? Or, how do you assess that contextual element and how it impacts individual teacher performance?
So we do not look at all of our data. We haven't got to that point yet of, okay, here are, here's domain 2, here's certain components. This is how teachers are performing. This is how buildings are performing. We do get feedback through the process of the appeals at the end of the year, so we get information there. We do see patterns, but it's one of the goals is to how do we use this evaluation data in a way that can inform some of the things that we do. The thing that has been kind of getting in our way is the changes. The state keeps changing things, so we're trying to catch up with that. And the nice thing is this year we have not made many changes, so we have more of a stable system because the state seems like has made the decisions and to keep it more of a consistent long term. But it's definitely an area that we can look at. So what are the components, what are the domains, and that's really an area we're getting to, is starting to look at, okay, here are our higher achievers, here are some folks who struggle, what are the commonalities, whether it's university, where we hired them, building, those things, because that is important. The data is important. This is one of the tools that we need to use. So here's an element example. So component 3C is engaging students in learning. So the 4 areas that evaluators are trained to look at are activities and assignments, grouping of students. So are the grouping of students intentional? Do they improve student outcomes? Do they improve student learning? Instructional materials and resources, are those directly related to what is being taught? Do students have choices? Are they responsible for helping manage those materials and resources? And then the structure and pacing of the lesson. So is the structure and the pacing, can be sometimes too slow, can be too fast, is it just right? Is there a structure and pacing? So those are the areas that each evaluator will look at in rating component 3C, engaging students in learning. So the evaluators, they only rate at the component level, so engaging students in learning. They do not do an overall domain rating, and they do not rate every element which is underneath. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to provide a more consistent and reliable system. In the past, when we first did that, a evaluator would rate each of the components and say, okay, well, there's certain highly effective, certain effective, certain minimally effective. Well, I think that's minimally effective. Well, another principal at another school could have those exact same component ratings and say, well, in my mind, that's effective. So we train and have the evaluators only rate at the component level, and then there's a mathematical calculation that provides the teacher with their rating, so where it lands on a continuum, and what is the performance of that.
So it is possible that a teacher can be minimum effective at one school and highly effective at another, what you're just saying?
No, what I'm saying is that in the past, there wasn't the consistency built into the system because the evaluator had the final say in what the overall effectiveness of the lesson was, whereas now it's not. So if every single lesson that is rated at the component level the same way will have the exact same rating. So in the past, it was up to the evaluator to decide. Now, the third year, it's not up to the evaluator what the final rating is. They only rate the components. The overall rating of the lesson is based on what the calculated final score of that lesson is. And the district spent a lot of time with basis policy calibrating what those scores were, looking at, okay, here are student growth scores, here are tripod scores, here are observation scores. Where should the observation scores land based on what effective practices in the district for student outcomes. So here's the example of the rubric. So this is the element, activities and assignments. So it spells out clearly what the different effectiveness levels are: ineffective, minimally effective, effective, and highly effective. And that is provides clarity and consistency on what good practice is. So as a teacher, I can read this and I can look at it and say, okay, this is where I need to go for effective practice. This is where I need to go for a highly effective practice. So it provides consistency throughout the district that all folks have the same language, and all evaluators have the understanding of what that looks like. So here's a history of using the Danielson rubric. So in 1999 and 2000, the 1996 Danielson Framework for Teaching rubric was first implemented for evaluation purposes. And that was a group of, I believe, teachers and administrators and central office folks did some study and designed what's now the PEP process. So we've been using it for 16 years now, one of the Danielson frameworks. In 2013, 2014, we expanded the use of the Danielson rubrics. That's one of, I think, the really strengths of the Danielson rubric that is different than the other. Some of the other rubrics that have been approved by the state is that they have individual rubrics for psychologists, instructional specialists, therapeutic specialists, counselors. So we're not trying to evaluate folks with a rubric that was designed for teachers that aren't teachers. So that's been one of the improvements that we've used and one of the strengths of the Danielson. In 2014, we implemented the 2007 Danielson Framework for Teaching, so there were some changes that were made. And around the rubric in some language, not really a wholesale change, just some minor tweaks. There is a 2011 and 2013 versions. The evaluation committee in the district looked at those versions, and there just wasn't much difference between that 11 and 13 versions and the 2007 version. The reason I believe that there's a 2013 version was because it was 2007 is owned by the ASCD, the 2013 is owned by Danielson, and she partnered with some software companies for to use it. So In 2014, the new teacher academy for our new teachers, there's courses for each component, so it's organized around that. So if I'm a new teacher, each of the components in the first 3 domains, there's a course around that. And then the Mentor Academy courses, so there's a rigorous program that our mentors go through, 5 or 6 classes to being certified as a mentor, and those are designed around the Danielson rubric. So again, that connectiveness and that alignment. Some of those classes, the mentors and the new teachers attend that together and discourse around the Danielson rubric. So the Danielson rubric has been vetted by Cambridge Education, so international experts in teaching, learning, evaluation, and observation, and by Basis Policy Research. And David Stite, he's a national expert on teacher evaluation. He happens to live in East Grand Rapids, but he's really is on the leading edge of nationally on teacher evaluation, so he's been a great resource for us. Cambridge Education does all of our, so they're an expert in the Danielson rubric, and they do our training for all our and certification for all our evaluators. So we also get yearly input from focus groups of teachers and administrators, previous and current JREA presidents, previous and current MEA UNISERV directors. So we really value that input and the voice of the folks who are using it and have made some changes and implemented some different improvements based on feedback that we've gotten from folks.
So your feedback, is it recorded that the committee can view it at times or not?
No, it's not. No, it's not.
So we've been using this for 16 years, is that correct? 16
Yes, a
years.
version of the Danielson rubric.
So we should really be good at this. I mean, there should have been some, cross-cultural components, some urban components that you've figured out in terms of, the population of students, the population of teachers. We know X amount of kinds of teachers come here, and they need these components in order to address the needs of our.
I think we are really, really good at it. I think we do things in the district that I don't think other districts are doing. I don't know who else is organizing their new teacher training around it, their mentor training around it. I don't know anybody any other district that has such a rigorous process to train our evaluators. Bridget Cheney and I do all the new evaluators, and it's a lot of pressure on them, and we put a lot of pressure on them because we want to make sure that they are able to use this, not just to have a accurate and reliable and valid rating, but also to use it as a tool to improve instructional practice, because that's really the most important part of it, is that each and every teacher gets feedback around the Danielson rubric that improves practice. So we worked really hard to make sure that our evaluators are ready to do that. And in fact, the last week and this week, all our evaluators are going through a certification process. They go every year. They have to be recertified. It makes everybody very, very nervous. It's very stressful. They have to go with a Cambridge trainer. They have to prove that they can make accurate ratings based on. I don't know how many other districts are doing that. So I think we're really ahead of what a lot of places are doing. So one of the things that I've heard and other folks have heard is that Charlotte Danielson says that the tool is not intended for evaluation. If you go to her website, she'll say it's a definition of good teaching, and one of the purposes of the framework is for teacher evaluation. So it's right there on her website that she does endorse it as to use for evaluation. She's partnered with evaluation software companies who use a rubric for evaluation. So, that's another just way that she does endorse it and says, okay, yeah, this is, I'm partnering with these software companies to provide a framework to use a rubric for teacher evaluation.
Yes, I want to respond to that. I just want to express my appreciation as I've seen, I've been on the board 8 years now, and I've seen the rigorous process to which this district has delved into best practices for evaluation, not a straightforward, simple thing while you're navigating the policy from the state, and deeply respect as I witnessed all the work done in on it. And this conversation, both with the tripod and the rubric, is, meant for diagnostic and then used for evaluation. And to some extent, what you just said in terms of the rigor of the evaluators to be used as a supportive and a developmental tool, it seems though that's everything. If it's used, with the exception of ineffective teachers, it's not a gotcha tool. It might be an evaluation tool, but the way in which it's delivered and used can serve as a diagnostic tool in its intention. I mean, that seems to me that's part of that question, that double-edged sword. Is it evaluation or is it diagnostic? It's the extent to which the results are used by the principal or other people giving instructional leadership with that teacher.
So Danielson does have, at times has some problem with how her tool is used in evaluation, not that it's used for evaluation, but how it's used. And so we've done some research on, what does she feel like best practice is? And pre and post observation conferences, well, we do that. Again, that goes to the point of having folks think about, okay, I'm going to be thoughtful when I design a lesson plan. I mean, that's best practice. Post-observation conferences, they have to go in and there's a form that teachers have to complete to reflect on their teaching, giving feedback. So after the lesson is completed and has been rated, then there's a meeting where feedback is given. And the main part of it is not to communicate a rating. The main part of it is to talk about when learning was best. Learning was best when. Learning could be better if. And what are some next steps to improve? And that helps anybody from the most highly effective teacher to a teacher who's struggling the most. When can learning be better? When was learning best? Let's work on that and improve implementing those best practices more consistently. What are the next steps? How is the evaluator going to provide support?
How often are the evaluations done?
So observations, it depends on what type of teacher I am. And that's another thing that Danielson talked about best practice, is that there shouldn't be just one process for one size fits all. So we have 3 different processes, one for probationary teachers, so I'm less experienced. I've taught for fewer years than other folks, so I'm going to have more feedback. So there's 3 observations for probationary teachers throughout the year. For tenured teachers, more experience, there's 2 observations per year. And then if I'm a tenured teacher and I'm struggling, then there will be 4 observations throughout the year. And one of the things, again, I think it's best practice that we do is that if there is a struggling teacher, we always try to have a second observer come in. So somebody outside the building who's an expert in evaluating. Sometimes I'll do those. Sometimes we'll have other administrators who have been trained will come in and do being a second observer. That way we know, there's not the bias, but even more importantly, there's another set of eyes and expertise who can give feedback and provide other strategies and support for other folks to do. And then, at the end of the year too, all teachers who are ineffective or minimally effective can appeal their final observation, the final evaluation rating. And that in the law, it only says that tenured ineffective teachers have a right to do that. But again, in the district, we want to make sure we have checks and balances, and we want to make sure it's fair so that we provide any teachers who are minimally effective or ineffective to appeal. And if there's something that we didn't do that we should have done, or the evaluator didn't do that shouldn't have, then we're going to say, you're right, we're going to change the rating. And sometimes we do, because again, it helps us hold ourselves accountable and helps hold the evaluators accountable. So the quote from, this is a 2016, very famous, it was in April in Ed Week, that is quoted a lot by Danielson, written by Danielson, was that few jurisdictions require their evaluators to actually demonstrate skill in making accurate judgments. And again, we've been very thoughtful and worked very hard to make sure that you can't evaluate, you can't observe unless you have demonstrated these skills. And if you don't pass that certification, then we provide additional support and additional training for those folks so that they can make those accurate judgments. And I talked a lot about a lot of this already, our rigorous evaluator and observer training. So again, if you're a new evaluator, the minimum you'll have is 2 full days of observation training. So the first day is a lot of classroom work where Bridget and I will talk about what good practice is, the importance of making fair and accurate, how to use the tool to improve instruction and practice. And then they'll do we'll watch a video and they'll do some rating, and then Bridget and I rate it too. And if they don't agree with our ratings, then we grill them on why they made those choices and help them understand how to observe better, so low stakes there. And then the second day, we actually go into a school and we go into classroom teachers, and they actually go in and observe and make ratings. And again, they have to agree with our ratings. And then if we feel like they're not ready to evaluate or be certified, then we'll do some one-on-one training where we'll go into a building and work with that evaluator one-on-one to help them improve their skills. We haven't had to do that lately, and Bridget and I are very proud that we're 100%. We've had all our folks that we've trained have passed their certification the first time. So our goal is to make sure that they are ready to be certified through the Cambridge process.
I have a question. I know both with the student growth component, but also with some of the language in the rubric in terms of effective or highly effective. What about that teacher? In my mind, some of the most extraordinary educators have a willingness to take on the most difficult students. And sometimes when that student's in their classroom, there's a sort of the Montessori terms normalization, but there's a way in which that student is brought into an instructional mode that you might not see the academic effects or even strong behavioral, they might not reach that highly effective till the following year, till they leave that teacher's classroom. Is there a way to kind of anticipate those high-need students and that they may be new? You have a highly effective instructor that's willing to take on difficult students, but on initial observation or even that year's academic scores, the results of that teacher's hard work is not demonstrated yet with that student.
So there's a couple ways that that's addressed. The first way is that part of the pre-observation conference, and then also a discussion with the teacher, is are there any students, what are the special circumstances? So you go in ahead of time kind of knowing what's going on. So you get that feedback, and you can better understand what's going on and how the teacher is. Do they have a thoughtful plan? Are they using instructional strategies that will best address what the student's difficulties are? And then the other, I think, really strong part of our system is that it's not just, the observations are based on just one year. So it's based on those observations and that practice during that. But we have multiple points of data, including 3 years of student growth. So that helps mitigate that and really gives a clearer picture of that teacher's practice. It will be one of the things that we're doing this year, again, because we have more consistency, is we're starting to look back and review the data. So So are there big swings? So it's highly effective one year, minimally effective another year. So are there big swings, or is it pretty consistent on being a way to rate what teacher performance is? And so I think there are things built in that mitigate those special circumstances. I mean, there's times too when folks have sometimes things going outside of school that can affect their performance. And that's, again, why there are checks and balances. So one of the things that we've seen in the past is that somebody will come to their appeal meeting and say, okay, here are other evidence of student growth in my classroom. Or, here's my map data for the year. Look at my scores were brought down because of this one outlier. Now, it doesn't happen very often. What we've seen so far is that consistent teaching is consistent teaching no matter what students are in
Right.
the classroom.
Yep.
But we also do build in some things in the process to make sure that those things are mitigated. Those 3 years of student growth data at the appeal process. So, I can show that I have different data than what was. So there's all those checks and balances.
Great, thank you.
And here are some data on effectiveness results. So this is numbers, I didn't do percentages, but as you can see, ineffective has been anywhere from 4 to 8, depending on the year. That is pretty consistent with data within the state and nationally, and in basically any type of business or organization, you're going to have a certain amount of folks who are really struggling. Minimally effective, I think, has, there's one spike in 2014-15, but again, 10 isn't really a lot. Effective has been pretty consistent, and highly effective has been fairly consistent. So I think that that shows that the process has been used fairly consistently in the last few years. Even with the differences in the state law, the 25% versus 40% student growth. So I think one of the things is that have we been consistent? And those numbers, I feel, paint a picture of that we've been fairly consistent on how we use the tool and where folks have been rated.
On these numbers, what's the average teacher years in teaching?
That's a great question.
So I'm looking at this and I'm wondering, so are these new teachers? What
So you're saying
You
it's
have an idea?
Sure, I would say,
like what's the average? 10 years, 5 years? I don't know. I'm just
I don't
curious.
know, we haven't segregated the data to that point. I would say ineffective, it's probably about 50-50. So 15, 16, 2 tenure, 2 probationary, usually probationary are in their first or second year. Minimally effective, I'd say again, 50-50 effective. I think as you go farther right you go, the more tenured teachers you get. But again, I haven't looked at the data at that level yet.
The other question I have is, does this reflect teacher movement? So they're moving from one building to another, or
I think one of the
is there any
we have
correlation
not, there may be we have not had as much movement as we had in the past. If you look at 5 or 6 years ago when we moved just a lot of folks, I think one of the things that has been a good strategy on the district is trying not to move folks. I haven't seen that data on how much that impacts. Again, just from looking, I don't think it has a huge impact. I was effective, I moved to another classroom, and now I'm minimally effective. I'm sure there's a few folks that happens, but I also know that there's a few folks who, okay, I moved into a new position that I have, I've taught in the past, I'm more comfortable with, so I think it affects teacher performance both ways. But again, I think we have not had as much movement, which I think is another positive, so it doesn't impact as much. There's a bar graph. I was very proud of myself. I was able to use Excel and PowerPoint to create a automatic. So it's, again, if you look at the bars, they're pretty consistent there. So what are we doing in 16, 17? We are looking at the other approved state tools. So there's the 5 dimensions of teaching and learning, Marzano, the thoughtful classroom. As I look at those tools, good teaching is good teaching. There's not a lot of differences in what the rubrics actually say. They may organize them a little differently. They may use a little different wording. There's not a lot of really differences, again, because good teaching is good teaching, good practice is good practice. So we will be doing some work on that. And I think in the county, it's about 50-50 right now with Danielson and then the 5 dimensions of teaching and learning. I think some of the changes in the 5 dimensions of teaching and learning is because KISD, that's the model that they're supporting, because the state set it up where they had to have some spreading out of what the ISDs, so all ISDs couldn't just do the Danielson rubric, some had to do the 5 dimensions, some had to do Marzano, some had to do thoughtful classroom. Ottawa County and the Kent ISD decided that Ottawa County should do Danielson, and KISD will do 5 dimensions of teaching and learning. Any questions?
For those districts that are using the Danielson, how does their data line up to ours in terms of number of teachers evaluated as effective or highly effective?
It's a good question. I haven't seen that data this year yet. I don't think they've connected in past years. It's similar. One of the trends, though, in the state, I know, is that every year, we get more effective and highly effective teachers. So I think that, again, is part of the folks designing evaluation systems that are based on feedback, and then teachers understanding with a rubric, this is what good practice looks like, and again, evaluators being able to evaluate better. So I think that's a trend that you'll just see, because the bottom line is that this was designed to improve practice, so it should improve practice, so we should see more effective and highly effective. So I think it also has provided some other folks just the data to show that maybe teaching's not for me, and some folks are getting out because of that.
Okay, imagine some of it's impacted to the extent they're handling the training of their evaluators at the same level we are. I mean, it seems like so much of this is dependent on the quality of the evaluators. So it's great to hear that our district's leading on how rigorous that process is for evaluators.
And when I listen to other districts and what they're doing, sometimes my jaw just drops, like, oh my goodness, that's really what you guys are doing, when this is high stakes. And then also when I go to evaluation conferences or trainings, it feels good to see that we're doing what we should be doing, most of the time ahead of what anybody else is doing with the process.
Along the same lines as what Dr. Fells was talking about, do you compare, or do you get a chance to talk to other urban districts that might be using this and seeing how either they're doing it, or you know that they're using it, and you say, hey, how are we doing in comparison to them?
We haven't necessarily in urban districts. We have looked at other practice in other districts. Well, I guess we have. We have actually nationally. We've looked at what are some other districts doing with it, with the Danielson rubric, and how are they designing their teacher evaluation system. So we looked throughout the nation on what best practice was. That's one of the advantages of having David Steichen basis policy when we first designed the system, is that, again, he's a national expert and knew what was going on throughout best practice throughout the nation, who was ahead of the game. The district really invested a lot of resources to make sure we do this right. I mean, even that they have you have somebody in my position who's one of their main responsibilities around teacher evaluation, well, all evaluation, really, I think, shows the commitment that the district has towards making this the best possible.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Also, with this rubric, if I can say that it has also shown an increase in the academic learning of our students. I think that's what's important. And it'd be nice to continue to put that data out there, that the students are achieving. We do that, but in terms of from a GPRS group of people or in this system that parents need to know a little bit more about this system and how it operates and how it works. Because I'm still anxious to know, you had something on here about working with parents. And so I think that's going to be key in kids learning. So the rubric is doing what it's supposed to do. I remember when I first came on, Dr. Baker was the academic achievement chair, and we were talking about this rubric. And one of the things I was concerned with, how was it going to affect the teachers? If you have a teacher that's minimally effective, and then he may or she may be effective in another school. I think Mary Jo explained that very clearly as to how that was going to work, and now I'm seeing the benefits of it right here, right now. But the academic piece for the kids, I think, is very important. So if the teachers are continuing to improve, the students got to improve, and the communication with parents as well. So I want to thank you. Thank you for bringing this to us. I think Mrs. Evans and I talked about this, and when Mrs. Pitts brought it up, I wasn't sure that we were voting on something new. I thought we had already voted on it. I didn't know we had to reevaluate.
It's the first time we had to vote on it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about this. I was kind of confused about it. So we already got it. Why we got to vote on it again? But we're updating and improving, and I think it's important. So it's more to it than what we really know and understand. So you explained that clearly today, and I thank you. I thank you for me.
If you have any other questions, feel free to email or call me or stop by.
Okay, with that, we have no action plans. We don't have anything to vote on. Okay, all right, then let's get out and vote for Nathaniel Moody. Write him in as President of the United States. Meeting adjourned.
Chair of Academic Achievement, President of the U.S.